Welcome beyond the Reiki Gateway. I'm your host, Andrea Kennedy. Like countless others, Reiki found me when I wasn't even looking, and then it ignited a whole new world of questions. This podcast explores topics of interest for the spiritually curious. Join me for discussions and special guests on subjects such as past lives, crystal healing, spiritual awakening, ascension, energy healing, and more, all to assist and inspire you along your unique soul's journey. This episode is sponsored by Mainstream Reiki, offering classes, a community, sessions, and resources. Visit mainstreamreiki.com to find out more. Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Andrea, and we're going beyond the Reiki Gateway today with my guest, Helena Woods. She's a professional relocation astrologer and astrocartographer who's helped over 2,500 clients discover the transformative power of place. Helena brings astrology down to earth, making it fun, approachable, and powerfully practical. Through her courses, podcast, book, and private sessions, she guides people to places where they can thrive in love, career, and personal growth. She's now traveling the world full-time and is currently based in Paris. Today, we'll explore what astrocartography is, how it works, and what it might reveal about the places where we feel most aligned. Later in the show, Helena has a special treat. She's even going to share some insights using my birth chart, so I'm super curious about that. Welcome to the show, Helena. Thanks for being here all the way from Paris.
I'm so excited to talk about my favorite thing, the power of place.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm actually new to this entire type of astrology, and it came across my radar, and you, of course, because you're out there in so many different places. So I wonder, though, what can you tell us? Because I'm sure a lot of listeners are like me, and this is actually brand new to them. So what is astrocartography in everyday terms?
It's the energy, the story of locations. I don't know if you've ever noticed how when you travel somewhere, you always feel a certain way, or when you go down a certain path in your town or certain neighborhoods, certain areas where you live that always feel really supportive for you. Or even maybe there's that location in the world, you had that trip that everyone told you to go see Cinque Terre or go see the pyramids in Egypt, but it didn't feel great being there, or you just didn't vibe with the place. This is the energy of location, and it all goes back to your birth chart, the exact time that you were born. Exactly, your birth chart has these stories in the world, and it's all based on the chart and then also your map. You have like a unique map of the world.
Okay, but we know about regular astrology, and I don't know, that's not a very accurate term, but the astrology that we see, in everyday life. So how is this different than that? I mean, I get that it's places, and it's focused on that and the location of birth maybe, but how do they fit in together?
Yeah. It's essentially a specialty within astrology. So there's so many different branches. There's so many different types of astrology that people specialize in, whether it's like forensic astrology, world predictions, love, relationship astrology. And this is just the astrology of place. And so what happens is when you were born, at the moment that you were born, you had certain planets rising and setting in different parts of the world. Maybe you had the sun on the midheaven in Japan when you were born, or you have the moon in this place, in this country, in this where you were born. And so when you were born, it's the map, the astrocartography map is essentially showing you where certain planets in your birth chart are really emphasized. So let's say, for instance, you have a planet on the relationship point in some part of the world. At that point when you were born, you have that planet in the relationship sector of your chart in that country. And so when you go to these places, when you travel, when you visit these places, those stories of what the chart is showing you is coming up. Same with energy. The energy of that planet is being emphasized. the energy of that planet is being displayed. It's just becoming more prominent and pronounced when you go to these different places. So it's essentially just showing when the planets become angular or influential in your life.
And so, is it the same birth chart that we would have done for us, but you're just looking at different aspects of it?
Yeah, so it starts with the birth chart, and then what happens is we do what's called a relocation chart. So it is your birth chart, but we're just moving the chart for the new location that you're looking for. So let's say, yeah, you have your birth chart. You were born in Texas, right? If you were born at the same exact second, minute, same exact time, but it was in Japan, that's the relocation chart. So you might notice the time shifts, right? The date might shift because it's such a huge time zone away, and the location shifts. So that shift of if I were born at the same moment but in Japan, this is the story. This is the chart for Japan, which is showing you the different areas of your life and what happens when you go to Japan and your story if you were living there.
Okay, so then what you're doing, if I'm understanding this correctly, is you use the birth information and then, like you said, put in a different location and then extrapolate out into the now. So then if I travel there now, then we can see what that experience might be like. Yes?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This is making a little bit more sense to me now. And so, can you share with us then how astrocartography, how did you arrive at that? How
Yeah.
did you get into this? And what influence did it have on your location?
Yeah. I got into astrology in 2011 for the first time, and I had a bookstore like around the corner from my house sold astrology books. So I've always been into it. My mom, when I was a newborn, she had an astrologer and like had books at home and pamphlets and all that. So I've always been into it. But it wasn't until 2018 when I moved to France that I learned about astrocartography for the first time. I'd heard it. I'd listened to a podcast about how places have energy. So I did some research. I found astrocartography on Google and then just went down a rabbit hole. I took all these courses. I read all these books. I just got deeper and deeper into it. Looked at all the maps and charts for all my friends and like just spent years just like trying to figure this out and how this works. And I always loved astrology, but I always wanted to be a travel writer or a travel blogger or talk about travel in foreign countries. And so that's what I had been doing, like blogging. All the work I had done before was like on travel and relocation. And so when I learned about astrocartography, it was like, oh, you could combine the love for astrology with the love for travel in foreign countries. And so I put those two together, created this business. But it was when I moved to France, and I live on my Venus line, which is like a home line. So loving where I live, feeling at home in the world here. And when I look at my relocation chart, the chart that moves, and I can see the story of France, it's like the whole story about becoming an astrologer, going online and teaching things. That whole story became active in my life when I moved to France in 2018. And so started my business in 2021, went full time really quickly, and I've been doing it ever since, just helping people, teaching this.
Okay. I have questions. So, okay, where were you born?
Poway, California.
Okay, so California. And if I was following what you said correctly, it sounded like you moved to France before you got into astrocartography. So, yes?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct.
So, was it just a coincidence? I don't believe in coincidences, but that you moved to France and it was a wonderful place for you in the realm of astrocartography?
Yeah, I think it was fate. I mean, I don't have a lot of great lines in the US, and also I just never resonated with the US. And so we moved because of my husband's job. He got a job that took us to France. I wanted to leave the country. He got a job. So we moved over to France. And then while I was there, I didn't have a job. I didn't have anything to do. I was just kind of on a tourist visa waiting with him. We were going to move back to the US maybe in a couple of years, but it was kind of our adventure of like what it's like to live abroad. Let's do it for 2 years and see what it's like. And we were supposed to move back. We fell in love here. Like, we love it here. Like, I fell in love with living here. And then I have my best lines here. And then he has his best career lines here. And so it's interesting because he's always had so much support and opportunities with jobs and money and career. And he didn't have that in the US. And so it's just lucky that we both have our good lines in France and we both feel drawn to be here. And also, it awakened both of our stories with our career that just it unfolded for us here.
Wow. This is maybe a little off topic, but what kind of area is he in?
He's in English teaching. So he teaches
Oh,
English to students. He loves teaching. And now he found also more of his career that he wants to do. He wants to help people move to France and move to Europe and cultural identity work and all that. So he also found a lot of his passions being on his advantageous career lines here in Europe.
it just stands out to me so clearly, again, that no coincidences at all, right? Yeah, something bigger.
Yeah, and also I met him on my love line, my relationship line in New York years ago. So I had a specific planet on my relationship point in New York, and he had that same planet on him and his identity. And so just fascinating to see how there's also love lines and like where are your relationships in the world. And also met him on those love lines. So really fascinating.
Yeah. Wow, that is really something. So, what kind of questions can astrocartography help us explore?
On the basic level, it can help us find our best vacation spots. Where are we going to enjoy our vacations the most? Where are we going to feel good in the world when we take that trip? Same with relocation. Where is it best to live, to buy a house, to buy property, to invest in land, to grow a family? But also the spiritual, the energetic. Where are places in the world that open up a sense of spiritual enlightenment or activation within our natal promise of our sense of purpose, what we want to do. Places open up these stories when we go to them. Also, where are your people in the world? Where are your friends? Where are your community? Where are those people in the world that could be really helpful for you in your business, in your career? If you wanted to hire someone and you see that you've got a great line going right through where they're living, it's like, let's look into maybe hiring a team member in that part of the world. Or even on a business level, if you wanted to launch Facebook ads, direct the Facebook ads to that location in the world where you have a lot of success and visibility and recognition and success with that. So there's so many ways you can use this, whether it's a practical or a spiritual or just like the way you feel. It's all of it.
So, this would change though, right? So, if someone came in for a reading and is is the number one thing, where should I live? Is that like the most common thing you think that
Probably,
they
yeah.
arrive with? Yeah.
Yeah.
But from what you're saying, it's pretty much endless, what you
Yeah.
can ask, right? But
Yeah.
so if you have a reading and you want to know about vacation spots, for example, well, that's going to change, right, over time. So if you were to tell me, oh, yeah, go on vacation to the UK, right? Is that only for a certain time? And then, like, maybe in 5 years, that wouldn't be good. And then maybe I should go to Africa or something. Is that right?
That's where we add the timing component. Yeah. So
Oh,
your map never changes. It's always permanent. So like you might have a beautiful line in the UK and you could go there many times throughout 20, 30 years and you'll enjoy it. But there are times in life when you're going to get transits. And these are the real time planetary activity. So the moving planets, the timing of it. When you have a hard transit that's affecting that line in that country, might not be the easiest time to go that year or that for the next 2 to 3 years, for instance. So I've seen this with clients where they'll have beautiful lines going through certain parts of the world, but when they go, they have a hard transit that makes the experience a little bit more isolating or a little bit more lonely or homesick or just not feeling like you felt when you went there previously. And so timing is really important. And that's why I do tend to see clients on a consistent basis. We plan their travels every year because the timing will shift depending on where you want to look at in the world.
right. And if they're looking at moving, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
actually relocating based on their map, um, what would you say, what are the pitfalls of that? Because I would imagine it's not all so cut and dry.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, the first thing that I always do is I just want to make sure that the fourth house or the IC in the chart is strong and solid. And so that's a technical part of it. But sometimes people want to live somewhere for 10 years and then they want to move, and that's okay. I really believe that we're constantly evolving, and where we feel drawn to at one point in time, 20 years later, we might want to live somewhere else. However, there are certain lines that are really helpful for living in terms of long-term living. There's certain specific lines for that. The guy that created astrocartography, he calls them retirement lines. So there are like nice lines for that. And actually, I actually really like it where you are, and we'll talk about this later, but got some nice placements in Michigan.
Oh,
But yeah, I mean, I would say the thing that a lot of people don't realize when they're first getting into this is no place is perfect. There's going to be difficulty in some area of your life wherever you live. And so I think a lot of people, when they try to find a really great line or a great chart and they move there, they might love it for 5 years, but then they might go through some hard transits in life, or they might feel stuck in their living situation for a year. That's just life. That's part of the journey of being human and navigating the ups and downs of living on this planet. But I think the thing to remember is timing is temporary, transits are transitory, it's not permanent. And if you love the place and you have great astrocartography, that's like a win-win.
so free will and different things, they all come into play then. Yes.
The places that people feel drawn to intuitively, they often have really cool things on their map there. So places where people don't feel drawn to, there's either no lines there or they've got some hard lines there. And I really believe that as long as we're listening to our intuition, that intuition is going to guide us where we're meant to go. But the astrology and the astrocartography is a mirror. It's a reflection of that which already is. So we already know what we feel drawn to or where we feel called to go, but the map is just confirming and showing us the practicality of it.
Don't we often need a little validation or something?
Yeah.
Intuition, I think more and more people are tapping into that. And I still hear, though, people say, I don't know, it seems like I'm making it up. But I could see the real value of having a chart. And I mean, if you're going to pick up your whole life and move somewhere, especially overseas, to a
Oh,
whole new
yeah.
country,
Yeah.
ooh, I would feel better having it mapped out and having some reassurance there, that undoubtedly, for
Yeah,
sure.
and that's why I got into astrocartography, is because this gives people more confirmation and like just an objective, unbiased perspective on the story of a place for someone. How is it going to feel? What is going to come up over the timing of living here? And I think, moving and traveling is expensive. It costs a lot of money to move. And so being able to have that information is just so valuable.
Yeah, and not only is it expensive, but it's discombobulating. I mean, that's a weird word. I never say that word, but it is. It's unsettling, energetically. I mean, your whole life could be different. You have to find all new connections just for, you know, doctors and dentists or, whatever it is that you would need. And if you have children, the schools, that's a whole nother thing. What about that? What about families that there are spouses and then maybe they have children? Do you do a whole family reading? I mean, how good is a place for the family?
Yeah, you have to look at the whole family, because I always say lead with the parents, because the kids will pick up on the energy of the parents, and just letting the parents, like, leading with that information is number one. But you have to look at everyone's map. You have to look at everyone's chart. And often I have found that families are often in alignment, couples are in alignment. Like, I remember I had one family and all four of them were great in this one location in the US. It was like Albuquerque, New Mexico, or Santa Fe, New Mexico, random, but all four of them were great and had great energy in that spot. And so you can find it. It gets hard because if there's one difficult line or one difficult thing for one person, it could be that person's having a difficult time, but everyone else is fine. And the other thing is, let's say like two or three people have great lines in an area, but one person doesn't have any lines in the area. I like that more than if someone had a difficult line versus like having an empty, spacious area. Because when you see these lines on the maps, they're places of power, they're places of urgency, influence, signification. And so if there's one, let's say there's a child and they don't have any lines there, I like that more than if they had a difficult line.
I could see how this could be, I don't know, have we used the word rabbit hole yet? Because
Yeah.
totally,
Yeah.
totally. I have two children and I've moved a lot. And the children, after I was married and had the children, we've moved several times too. And I'm thinking back, I wonder what we would have done with all the information that I never knew was out there. I wonder if we would have made those same choices. And that brings me to a question. Do you ever look back? Is there value in looking at the past for people? Is that part of your practice?
Oh, yeah. It's so helpful, especially when the client will bring up, I had this really crazy experience that happened in this part of the world during this time. And so what I'll do is I'll pull up my computer, I'll pull in the exact date and the location. I'll just see what was going on in that area when they were there. And there's usually something happening. Like a line is hitting that timing wise. So it's activating that place in a challenging way. So yeah, I love looking back, love looking back. It's really, that's how I learned so much with this is doing so many client readings, seeing the examples and the stories of how these places literally manifest the stories on the charts. It's just wild. And looking back at the timing, there's so much data you can get from that.
Yeah, because you have the history to go
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
and the experiences. And that is really extraordinary to think about that. And I don't know, it's really mind blowing. So one of the things I wanted to ask, do you incorporate other modalities? Now we've mentioned intuition, but what else? Is there anything else that you put into the readings or the teachings?
Well, I'm a predictive astrologer, so I do a lot of traditional timing techniques, a lot of like traditional astrology work. I would say astrology is my big thing. The second thing that I do like to add into my reading, if the client needs it, or if we're not getting some clarity in terms of what the client wants, is I'll do some inner voice work, which is essentially connecting with your breath and your body and going into either your heart or your stomach area and waiting for the answers to arise, to kind of float up to the surface. So, breath work, listening to the body, and letting the inner voice or the intuition guide the answers. So, I do a couple of different exercises. I have a different, like, little things that I do to help people get clear on like what they want, what's important to them, what are their non-negotiables, where are they feeling drawn to in the world. Like if I'm ever seeing people a little bit confused, we'll do that inner voice work, and I find it's just so powerful to get those answers from that place of inner wisdom.
I can imagine that the thinking mind, I mean, we know that, or I guess I could speak from my own experience. My mind can talk myself into and out of anything and think that something's a great idea. So I really appreciate that you support the clients to listen and go deeper and sink below that thinking mind and the reactive place. And have you seen an increase in people wanting to leave the US in the last, I don't know, 6 months?
Oh, yeah, big time. And it's crazy because I started talking about this I started making videos in 2020 about relocation and why it was so important. And I thought people would want to relocate soon. And then in 2022, I started looking at the astrology because in 2020, actually 2019, all these professional astrologers, and I wasn't doing it professionally at this point. There's so many astrologers online talking about something's crazy is going to happen in 2020, beginning of 2020, something's going to happen. It's a huge transit that's happening and it could affect the whole world. And so when that ended up being correct with the pandemic, I got really into world predictive astrology and looking at the transits and cycles within countries and what's happening. And so I started just doing research and learning about it. And it was like 2022, I noted that there were certain transits happening to the US in 2025, starting in 25, and then through 2033. So it starts this year. And so in 2022, I started talking online about how relocation is the future. Astrocartography is going to become super important because everyone's going to want to leave the US, or not everyone, but a lot of people would want to leave the US and look at getting a second passport or getting dual citizenship somewhere else or getting in property in a different country. And so I just started talking about this all the time. And now the influx of people looking to get an astrocartography reading, wanting to move, looking at second passports, all these companies that help with that relocation like specialty, their businesses are going through the roof right now. It's just people are wanting to find safety and peace and stability. And I'm a really big believer that we are all intuitive and we can all sense something before it comes. And I just think people want peace. They're looking for peace. And the US is going to be going through it, especially starting this summer and then next summer, summer of 26. And so I just think, yeah, people are wanting to leave just to have an option. If something happens, what are, some options of places to live?
I don't think I could move on from this moment without asking about the summer of 2025. And I understand that this is nothing set in stone and everything's with a grain of salt. But because you mentioned that, I feel like for our audience, is there anything that you feel comfortable in saying about this summer and next summer that you brought up?
Yeah. So what we're experiencing is outer planet transits, which essentially means these slow moving planets that take forever to move, 20 years, 30 years, 14 years, right? They're all moving at the same time into new zodiac signs. So we're leaving this water and earth energy, and we're going into fire, air energy. And so it starts this summer, and it's really when Uranus enters Gemini, which is, I think, July 7th of this year. When Uranus enters Gemini, it's about changes in ideas, but it's a cycle, a pattern. Because when we're looking at astrology, we're looking at cycles and patterns. When were the last times that this happened? The last time that Uranus entered Gemini was World War II. The time before that was the Civil War. And the time before that was the American Revolutionary War. So every time this planet enters this sign, the US is involved with world conflict or internal civil unrest. Now, the reason for this is because Uranus is the planet of change. And Uranus is the United States, in the birth chart of the United States. Uranus is in Gemini. And so we're having what's called a Uranus return. It's when Uranus comes back and returns to the point when the US was founded. And so every time this transit comes back, it takes 84 years to come back. And so every time that cycle repeats, we have these themes that keep happening. But the other thing is it's in the house of open enemies, right? Uranus in the house of open enemies for the United States, and it's with Mars. And Mars is conflict, war, fighting, aggression. And so when we get Uranus returning back to the spot, it opens or awakens the story that's baked in to the United States birth chart. So just like we have birth charts about our lives and then the transits come and awaken a story, it's the same for countries. Countries have birth charts for when they were founded, and when we have transits that come and awaken a story, it brings about that theme, and then we use astrology to look at the patterns and the cycles of when it happens. So essentially, I am concerned about war, whether it's global. And so I'm looking at this summer to see what is the start of this, just paying attention to what countries are getting involved. Every time we have what's called a Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which is very slow moving, again, outer planets, Russia is very heavily involved with things. So I'm looking at Russia. And it's just also Pluto and Aquarius. This is the next 20-year cycle we just started. This is all about AI, the changes in technology, the future of AI and all of that. And, we started getting glimpses of this a year ago, but now it's like we're firmly in this story of the change in technology and future ideas and thinking for the next 20 years. So we're seeing these slow moving planets moving into brand new energies, this fire air energy. And so with that, I just think if there's not a global conflict with the US, that the US is getting involved in conflict, I think there's going to be a lot of civil revolution or civil unrest type things. And I think that will look different, depending on the time. Is this more cyber warfare, right? Is this psychological warfare? Like, what kind of warfare is this? That will look different depending on the age that we're in. But I think technology, drones, things like that, that's going to play a bigger part over these years.
That makes a lot of sense. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the different wars that you had mentioned and how different they were. I mean, even technologically speaking. And so why would it not be that this time? That's really interesting because I had not even really thought about that. So that's really fascinating. And what I also find quite incredible is that we are watching this play out in a way and with numbers of people like never before. Like never before. So you mentioned World War II or Civil War. I mean, look at where we are today. You're in Paris and I'm in Michigan, and we are having this conversation, and we are now looking forward to see how something plays out. Like, we are sitting here with popcorn, getting to watch this with knowledge about where we've been and where we are, and knowledge about world events in real time. That's never been like that before.
It's so fascinating. I mean, what a time to be alive. I keep telling people, like, this is the best time to be an astrologer, because literally when you see a news update on like the beginnings, it's all about a domino effect. One domino has to fall and then the next one and the next one. And that's how we start seeing things play out. And so it's like when you notice things come up during certain alignments, it's just fascinating to watch it. And and also it's all the people who don't know astrology or who don't know about life cycles with this. It's like there's so many people that don't know these cycles we're about to enter, and it's fascinating to be alive, to talk about this with other people. We're in the information age. It's so cool.
And I have to imagine so many more people are hearing about this kind of thing, and they want to learn about it. They want to spend more time. But it's very much a study, right? I mean, it's a study of not just the now, but the future. And as we mentioned earlier, the past, because the learning opportunity, because it's historical, and
Yes.
then you have the astrology. It's so unique. I mean, I can't think in my mind, at least at this moment, anything that's like that. Can you?
No, it's fascinating. I know. And if anyone wants to read about this, like the life cycles or with history and all that, the book Cosmos and Psyche by Richard Tarnas, it's so thick, but it's so good. He talks about all the planetary cycles with different moments in time and history, the Enlightenment, the Renaissance. It's really fascinating. But I know, and like now we have TikTok and Instagram and these short form places where people are on their phone finding this information. And so the downside of that too is there's also a lot of misinformation. A lot of people who don't read books, who don't take courses, who don't go deep with their knowledge. They just learn one thing and then they call themselves an astrologer and go on TikTok. And it's so there's a pro and a con, but I would say there's definitely more pros because more people are learning to connect with their intuition, to notice patterns, to notice cycles in their lives, to reflect more, to journal more. Like it brings a lot of good.
I agree that it does bring a lot of good. And I also think people are waking up to what you just said about somebody, watches a video and then all of a sudden they're like a guru or whatever. Because I think people are catching on to that. It's so easy to make a reel. Anybody can make a reel and put it out there. But I think people are getting savvy. They're waking up. And that's why I think it's so important to check people out, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you can see a reel or whatever, but what else are they doing? And again, it's the technology because they can go
Hmm.
online and really look into a person. And I highly, highly recommend that. Um, yeah, people say, oh, I went online and did research. Okay, but did you?
I know. And that's why I started teaching courses, is because I would see on TikTok, or I would get DMs from people that I worked with or friends, and they'd be like, you know, this girl, she has a $2,000 course on astrocartography, and she doesn't teach on relocation charts. She doesn't teach on parens, which that's a separate thing, but it's the latitude lines, the lines that are going at a latitude in different cities, depending on where you are in that state, for example. And so there are so many people that, and I'd have like people DM me and tell me, like, I asked this person if they knew what parents were and they said they didn't know. Or I asked this person if they knew who Jim Lewis was, the guy who created astrocartography, and they said they didn't know. And it's like, that's where it motivated me to start teaching this, to make my own course, to start going online and going more in depth with this, because I saw so many people that weren't getting the information that they could have had. So yeah, wild.
I know, right? And we have a similar story because that's why I went on YouTube in the first place. I saw what was there, and it was actually my husband who said you should do a YouTube channel, and thought he was absolutely crazy. And I got curious and I looked on YouTube for stuff about Reiki, and I'm like, I think I have some things I could say,
I
that
love it.
might be helpful, and
That's so
so
great.
yeah, I think we have that in common for sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, I am also struck when you were talking about that, how, everything is not good or bad.
Hmm.
Like when you mentioned TikTok and, somebody makes a reel and, or does a class and they're the expert and they're really not. And we might say, oh, that's terrible. But it's not. It's not, because there's the lighter side of that, and everything is balanced. Nothing is all bad, nothing's all terrible, nothing's all good, but it creates a context and it creates a need, right? It creates, and maybe not an, it doesn't create the need, but it shines light on a need that we can step into, and it's a calling then.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, I'm a big believer that everything is neutral. And also the idea of like, no one's your friend, no one's your enemy. Everyone's a teacher. Everyone is showing you what you're here to learn. Everything is neutral in life. But if we get curious and like live in that sense of observation and curiosity, we'll often be led to the people we're meant to meet, to pursue the things we're meant to pursue, to learn the new tools that we're meant to learn. But it comes from that place of like non-judgment and open-minded curiosity. I really believe that that kind of experimenter curiosity energy is just so helpful in like finding your life calling and finding what lights you up and brings you joy in life. So important.
I agree. I agree. I know that you had shared about you and your husband a little bit and how all that unfolded. Can you share a client example of they came for a reading, this came up, and that they followed something and how it unfolded? How did it, the from the beginning to the manifestation? Can you share something?
Yeah, I have one story. I've a lot of stories like this, but one that comes to mind is there was a woman I met. She booked a reading with me. She really wanted to find love in the world and find a partner, and she was living in Copenhagen, Denmark, I believe. And we looked at the world, and I told her where all her love places in the world, like where she could find love, where a partner could come from in the world. And I gave her like three places, and she was online like swiping on dating, and so she set her location to the place that I told her. It was Montana in the US. She set her location and she got a message from someone, a guy. And so when I told her in the reading, so she was talking to this guy already, but when I told her in the reading, this is a love line going through these states in the US, and one of the strongest places was Montana. She reached out to that guy that she had met on the dating app, and now they're engaged, and she lives with him in Montana. It's a magical relationship. She's like so in love, over the moon, met her life partner. She's about to get married. And it was my reading with her. When I told her those three locations that are best for love, she took that as confirmation, and then she acted on it. And then she connected with him, started a relationship with him, started communicating with him, and then doing long distance, and then went out to see him. And it was just, that was it. That was history. And so things like that, I get a lot of client stories like that, like helping people relocate to places if they're seeking love, like if their career is going great and they're really happy, but they're specifically wanting love. I'll tell them like, where are the best love places? They'll go there and they'll meet their partner and they'll come back to me and they'll be either married or engaged. It's just like, those are the stories I really, really love. I think those are my favorite.
That is really neat because I thought Denmark, and then you said Montana, and I thought, how is that gonna move forward? But then you brought in the technology piece, that dating app, you know, the online. That is really something.
Yeah.
Was she from Denmark? Do you remember?
I think she was there for like 3 years visiting, like on some work project or something. And so I think she was from the US originally, but she swiped and connected with him on the app. And then that's what brought her to Montana.
That is really something. What questions are people asking themselves that you would say, you know what, consider an astrocartography reading?
I would say the biggest one is, where is the best place for me to live? Or best places, because we have many places that are great for us in the world, for vacations, for living. Just depends on what the focus is that they want. I would say, where are my people in the world? Where can I find love? Where will romance and relationship themes come up for me in life? That's a big one. And then also, where can I have more success and visibility in what I'm known for in my career? Like sometimes I'll have clients come to me and say, I want to make an impact. I have this calling on my heart, but, you know, I feel like I'm not seen. I feel like, you know, I put myself out there and I'm not getting the recognition I want, or I'm working a lot of day jobs and I feel like I'm not making strides in my purpose, my impact, you know? Those are the 3 big ones. It's like, where is the best place to live? Where are my people? Where is romance and relationships for me? And where is my person coming from in the world? And then, where can I have more greater success in my career?
Have you ever told somebody in the reading, you live in the worst place ever, you got to get out of there? Have you ever said that to someone?
I don't say I've said the worst place, because I have heard of astrocartographers who say that, and they'll tell clients, because I've had clients that come to me from other astrocartographers that tell them like, there's no place in the US that's good for you. You can't live in the country. It's like, no. You have good stuff. It's not all like that. So I say it's the worst, but I've had people who like live on really hard lines, and I say, has it been difficult living here? What's it been like? Because you do have some, you know, these stories coming up. But on the flip side, there's always that light card too of like, there are good things in every bad location. It just depends on what they want. But yeah, there are harder lines and harder themes that can come up on the map. And I will try to encourage them just to consider their options if they want to move. But I really read the energy. Like, if they're not someone who wants to move and they're like really happy with where they're living, but they do have a lot of difficulty, I won't tell them they should move. I'll just say, you have this theme in this story that's coming up for you. If you wanted to at some point relocate, here's some other options, but here's also the positive side of this location. So I'm always trying to give them a nuanced perspective.
I really appreciate that because, you know, moving is hard, as we've said, but how unfortunate that there are people out there that would say that kind of thing. And, you know, that's rough.
And that's also why I got really into showing up on YouTube too, is because I had a lot of clients that were telling me, I went to this person and they said there's no option for me, and it's like, no. You know, and there's all this fear mongering around certain lines. Like, people will say, oh, you can't go to a Pluto line because Pluto represents trauma. It's like, no. Pluto line also represents rebirth and spiritual exploration and like finding purpose within self. There's so empowerment, right? There's always the light to even the darker lines. And, you know, I know tons of people that love living on those Pluto lines, and they feel past life connection, which is a huge thing I've seen with certain lines. Do you believe in past lives?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I would say our audience does, for the most part. Yeah. So is there a place on the planet that you would not live?
Personally, Uranus lines are the trickiest for people because Uranus represents instability, unsettledness, feeling like you can't turn your brain off, can't sleep. There's just this sense like the mind is racing, you're always busy, you're fidgeting, there's just stuff always going on. It's like lightning in a bottle, or like restlessness, instability. And so I find that Uranus lines are tougher for people, especially when they want to live and like settle. And then depending on the chart, it really depends on the birth chart and which planets are best for that person. But I would say Mars lines can bring up a lot of frustration at times. And then Saturn can bring a lot of work and responsibility. But again, there's always a flip side to that. Like Mars can be entrepreneurship and innovation and hustling to build your life's work. There can be irritable moments at times, and also just a feeling of like you're going all the time. You're on a grind, you're hustling, you're busy. But for some people, they might really love that.
Yeah, and again the light and dark, or the positive negative. I just can't really underscore that enough. And so that's a good place, I think, as we lead into what you found when you looked at my chart. I will
I know.
remember. I
I
will
just
remember positive and
I
negative.
know. I was just pulling up your map because I was curious. One of the biggest past life lines that I see for people is always the Pluto IC line. And you have yours going through like New Zealand, Fiji, Tonga. Any of those parts of the world do you feel connected to?
I've wanted to go to Australia, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
a burning thing,
Mm-hmm.
but that is a place that I've wanted to go.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see past lifelines on the line, which are really cool. I think you've one in India as well. But in where you are now, you're in Michigan, right? You have so many cool lines here. I mean, you got the Jupiter IC line, which the guy who created astrocartography calls it like the ultimate retirement line, or one of the best lines for living long term, buying a property, having abundance, or some sort of like support financially with property ownership or with your home and family life. It's one of the best home and family lines to live on. So I love that. And you have Jupiter in Capricorn, so it's really grounded. It's really practical. There's like this earthy rooted settledness in your fourth house of home when you relocate in Michigan. So it's like I love the settledness here of like being based here and feeling that sense of home. You also have Mars on the MC, which is entrepreneurship. It's a very successful line. Some of the most successful clients I have live on that line, but it is a place of busyness, hustling, working, drivenness, ambition. But it is one of the most successful lines for getting things done, having an innovative idea, and going after it, like with like just that passion and zest. And then you have a Venus MC line, which is about you could be known for beauty, design, aesthetics, creative themes. Venus is all about pleasure, beauty, values, the simple joys of life. It's a beautiful planet. You got the two best planets in astrology in Michigan, which is so cool. But it's on the career and like your reputation and your public image. So there's something about having a Venusian energy about your reputation and how people see you and perceive you. And Venus is all about, connection, relating to people, relationships, and that beauty, that sense of beauty and pleasure. So, love to see these three astrocartography lines. So, it's a very powerful place in the world because you have so many astrocartography lines. So, there is a sense of like purpose, fulfillment, finding meaning, and living like a story that's very pronounced in your life. When did you move to Michigan?
It was actually 2015.
2015. And where were you before that?
Oh gosh, outside Buffalo, New York.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
But I've lived all over the place. So
Uh-huh.
we didn't care for outside Buffalo, New York.
Yeah.
We did not care for that location. Love the people there. They're wonderful, but it just wasn't for us. Just didn't feel right. And but it took us 8 years of time to get out of there. And when we moved, we knew we didn't want to be there long term. But the children were in school and things like that. And it was 2015, I believe it was 2015, that my older son graduated high school. So we took that opportunity. My husband got his way at work, and so we got to move here, which he's from. He's from Michigan. Hmm.
Wow. And it's interesting because you have a Uranus line close to Buffalo, which is like, it is kind of exciting energy for like new beginnings in your life, but it's also that feeling of like, I don't know if this is home. This doesn't feel like home. I don't feel settled. That's the Uranus energy.
You know, it was interesting when I lived there. I felt like I had been seeing clients and built a lot in Idaho where I lived prior to Buffalo, outside Buffalo, and I had to leave all that. And it was really, really hard. And when we got to Buffalo, I thought, you know, I can't do that again. I can't start something knowing I don't really want to put roots down here. And the image that I kept having that described my feeling about living there was the plane that just had to circle the airport endlessly that couldn't land. And then when we got here to Michigan, as soon as I got everything settled, my younger son in school, my older son in college, all of that, as soon as I got that done, it was as though I could just exhale and say, all right, I'm doing it, because I felt like I just waited forever. And then I got started, and one thing led to another, and it's been really, really wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. I love that. And that settledness of Jupiter on the IC and Capricorn, like just so like, okay, I can build a life here. Like my plane can officially land. I can unpack. Like I can fully start a life here. I love that.
Are there any other places in the US that stand out for me?
Yeah. Let me see here. So I don't love the East Coast, like the Northeast. Like I'm talking Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut. Got that Uranus line there. Um, do you like warmer or colder temperatures?
I prefer to be warm.
Mm-hmm. You've got some nice energy in Southern California. You have the Sun MC, which is like peak luminosity, so peak being seen. World stage, massive recognition. Like if you wanted like extreme visibility and being seen, fame, things like that, or just like leadership, like a lot of leadership, that's in Southern California. Very spiritual for you in Long Beach, California, and like that area like south of LA, like Orange County, California. You had a beautiful, spiritual, peaceful, relaxing, can be intuition, channeling, clear connection to your intuition here. So that's in that Southern California area. Very healing for you too. That whole coastline of like Southern California up to LA, up to Santa Barbara, up to San Francisco, it's just like spiritual enlightenment, spiritual connection. So it's super relaxing out there. Arizona can feel a little bit like duty bound responsibilities, a little bit heavier because you do have your Saturn line. So it's more about like obligations and work and time. So I like more California as opposed to going more inland to Arizona. And then Texas is a little intense. You do have a Pluto line, which just represents empowerment, but it can represent a lot of change, transformation, rebirth, alchemizing sense of self, psychology, subconscious work, digging deep into your beliefs, the foundation of your life. It's a powerful place for you, but it can be a little bit intense. And so it depends on what you want, but I would say I love the overall area that you're in now. And you could go down to Nashville, Tennessee, and still be on this beautiful line. You got a lovely home line in Nashville. You got one a little bit south of Cincinnati. I like Nashville slightly more. So I would say where you are, going south a little bit on this same area, and then Southern California, I like for you.
Fascinating. I went to Boston before.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell you, I did not care for it. And it was just really odd because I went up there for a training and I was very excited to go to the training, and it just didn't feel good to be up there.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I had feelings like, what's wrong with me? This is beautiful. I should be enjoying myself. And so as you mentioned that, it really puts into context that, there are things happening beyond what we see, right? And I know that intuitively, and, just because of life, I know that. But as you mentioned these things, and then I went to a similar training in Southern California, and I want to say I've been there twice, but I went to San Diego for the first one, and I just felt so wonderful there. I really loved it, and I couldn't explain why. So just the Boston San Diego thing, it was exactly comparable as far as what I was doing there, my excitement to go, but I just had very different reactions.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so just this few minutes that you've talked about this, I'm making these connections, and it's explaining some things for me that I never had even considered.
Yeah. And the sun and, the sun line that you have in California, it's about creativity, brightness, sunniness, that sense of extroversion, creativity, feeling lit up by life. Whereas in Boston, you have a Chiron line. And Chiron is about feeling a little bit more internal, self-reflective, a little bit more melancholy, a little bit more, tending to self. It's the wounded healer. So it can bring up triggers. It can bring up just a feeling of feeling uncomfortable, or just slightly like not fully like feeling that brightness that you have in California. So that's very interesting. Yeah, Chiron lines are weird for sure.
At the time, I was trying to rationalize, what's going on here? And I was rationalizing, coming up with, I don't know, was it the Salem witch trials in this area? Was it something like that? Do I have some past life here?
Mm-hmm.
How fascinating this all is. And what a wonderful gift that you've given me by going through my chart like that. It's so amazing, really amazing. And I want to thank you for being here. You've just shared so much. And how can our audience connect with you and go further?
Yeah, you can get started for free. I have a free cheat sheet with all the planetary line meanings. You can get that on my website at helenawoods.com/cheat sheet. You'll find all that there. And then I post every day on Instagram. I'm super active, sharing my travels, videos, things like that. I'm at Ms. Helena Woods. And then I am also on YouTube. If you like YouTube content, I document all my travels and tips, lessons, all of that. And if you wanted to go deeper, I have so much on my website, helenawoods.com.
What do you have planned for the future? Where are you going to travel next?
Yeah, I'm heading to my sun line in Australia this week. And I've been wanting to go to this sun line for so long, so many years. Always felt drawn to Australia for as long as I can remember. But I've got a special transit, so that moving Uranus, it's about to enter Gemini, but before it enters Gemini this summer, it's hitting my sun. So I'm going to my sun line when Uranus is hitting the sun over in Australia. So I'm doing that this week. I'm going to be there for like a month. And then I'm going to head up to Japan and go to my Jupiter line. So it's the same line that you have in Michigan. I've got that same line there. And and then I'll come back home here in Paris.
I can't even imagine all that travel.
I know.
You must know how to pack really well.
Yeah, I don't know how I do it. Like my friends are always asking me, like, aren't you tired? Because I've been doing this for years. And I've moved every year for the last 6 years. Like we move to a new location every year. And I don't have any furniture. We live minimally. But it's like people always ask me, like, aren't you tired of all this moving? And I'm like, I actually love it. Like I love getting on a plane and going. And I also just want to take advantage of these cool transits,
Oh, and we're all eyes on this summer.
Yeah.
What's happening.
Yeah.
And it's what a blessing it is that we can connect like this, talk like this. And I'm sure you'll be talking about it through all your channels, all your offerings.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely keep up. Thank you so much, Helena, for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening, and you can check the show notes or visit the website beyondthereikigateway.com to find out more about the podcast and connect with me. Please keep in mind that views and opinions expressed in the show don't necessarily reflect those of the podcast or anyone affiliated with its production or advertising. This program is presented for your entertainment only, and all information provided is to be utilized at the listener's own discretion. I, along with the BTRG team, hope you enjoy the show as much as we enjoy making it for you. Wishing you highest blessings until we meet again beyond the Reiki Gateway.